So it says that we're live.
Right, I've got a live button.
Yep. So let's say we've got a few big people. Okay, so I think we are live with Lisa, Janine, and Marie. So I hope that's the case. And hello, everybody. Really exciting to have you guys online. We are waiting on join the webinar, so we might just give those guys a minute or two, and then we'll kick off. This is the awkward bit I was mentioning about when you're waiting for people to come online. Sean, what do you reckon? Should we just kick off?
Yeah, you know, I can see you, so I'm going to turn this one off now.
Yep.
So that we don't have
We can see the house. Yeah. Huge fire.
Awesome. I reckon if you have like a list of people there.
Police cars were coming out of Back Street.
Yes, we're not on it.
Yes, it's down there with just a bunch of lights, fire,
Awesome.
and it was a big fire. It was quite a big fire.
Okay, so we'll just
Yeah, and anyone who's got the YouTube link,
oh, right.
these are the people who we invited from within
Great.
the thing. So the YouTube link's what I've been pushing out on Twitter and stuff. So
The whole street was just huge fire.
when you hear me talk, like, wow, I'm just going to get Twitter.
Great. Off. So good evening to everyone who is online and also our little mini audience in a Fighting Chance. So I think I've met everybody, but my name's Laura. And the reason we wanted to host this webinar / in-person meeting was really because as everyone knows, I think the NDIS is going to be rolling out across New South Wales from 1 July next year. And I think, you know, there's a lot of people who don't really know a huge amount about the NDIS, or if they do know about it, it's only in snippets and they're not necessarily 100% comfortable with it. So given the size of the scale of the change, I really wanted to, I suppose, play a bit of a role in kind of communicating with our network as much as I can, what I know about the NDIS and sort of help people be best equipped. A bit of a disclaimer about me and everyone, I think, but I don't work for NDIA. That's, you know, NDIS is really something I've come across in my job at Fighting Chance. And in particular, I've just finished up a 4-month accelerated course with the School for Social Entrepreneurs on the NDIS, which gave us really great access to a lot of the people who are driving the NDIS. A lot of had a bunch of expert opinions. So that's sort of given me some knowledge that I'd like to share, but I don't know everything. Any of your questions that I can't answer, I'll just say so, and we'll definitely put in the work to try and get answers for you. But, you know, the other thing to say is that the NDIS is changing rapidly. Bruce Bonahady, who is the chairman of the board, talks about it being an aeroplane that they're building while flying, while in the air. So things change as well. So from our perspective, you know, I want to share what I know. We will check things that I don't know, and, you know, if we continue the conversation over the next year, hopefully we can provide, you know, correct information over that period. So tonight, I'm going to talk for about 20 or so minutes, and the topics I'm going to cover, firstly, what the NDIS means for people with disability. Secondly, give you guys some feedback from the trial sites that the NDIA has been providing. And then look at what you guys, as people with disability or families of people with disability, could and should be doing to prepare for what's about to come. And then finally, just where to go for more information. And I'm going to leave a bunch of time for questions. So that's obviously easy for our in-room audience. For people who are watching the webinar through Google, you're able to post questions, which Sean will be able to see and pass to me. And then for those who are live streaming through YouTube, you won't have facility to put your questions on YouTube, but if you just want to email Sean, he will get those immediately and he can ask them on your behalf, and his email is Sean, spelled S-E-A-N, at fightingchance.org.au. Okay, so let's jump into it. So first of all, what does the NDIS mean for people with disabilities? So the NDIS represents two existing disability sector. So on one hand, it equates to more funds in the disability space for use by people with disability to buy their supports. And then secondly, it means that funds are going to be individualised. So those are the two kind of essential changes at the heart of NDIS. So in terms of more funds, so by full rollout in 2019-2020, the total NDIS budget is going to be 21.9 billion, which is up from 5.9 billion in 2011-12. So it's just under 6 to just over 20. It's a massive increase in the amount of money that's available for people with disability. And I think that increase is really reflecting the fact that people understand that this sector has been underfunded for a very long time. So that's sort of, it's about, I think, writing that balance. The second big piece is that that money is going to be given out in an individualised manner. So there are people, I think, on the, so there are people who are on the webinar who sort of are in the disability sector in the old block funding system. There are some more recent school leavers who have state-based individual understand you know, that whole philosophy, but the NDIS is going to really turbocharge. And what I mean by that is that instead of funds being divvied out amongst service providers who then can provide a funded service, what the NDIS is going to do is put the package of funds in the individual's hand with which to buy the supports that they need. So everyone is going to have, you know, control over their package of money to buy, you know, what they need for them. So the current estimates suggest that there are going to be about 460,000 individuals who will get a portion of that, you know, $21 billion as an individualised package with which to buy their supports. And no longer are people going to have to compete for a limited number of funded places in services, which really I think is at the heart of what's been problematic in the past. So another you know, big change is that the NDIS is an insurance scheme. And this is really at the heart, I think, of it goes along with the individualised point. It's an insurance scheme, and that is a really massive psychological change that I think we all, as people in this sector, have to get our heads around. So this means that your NDIS package is actually more like an insurance payout. And when you pay for support using your NDIS package, you're making a claim within that insurance framework. So in some ways, you know, that's semantics. You know, it's no longer charity. It's all going and you know, using a service. You're operating within an insurance framework. But actually, it's not just semantics. There's a profound psychological change of thinking that has to go along with that change. People with disabilities and their families need to get better at being the consumer and demanding quality in the supports and the people providing supports that you're going to be accessing, and really taking your money elsewhere if what's being provided to you isn't good enough. And that, I think, moving from a system where you just take whatever you can get and it's a bit charity based and it's all, you know, everything's limited and you're grateful for whatever you can get, even if it's rubbish, is gone. And we're going into a world where you have an insurance-based payout, and you, as the holders of that payout, can demand quality. And so that's the sort of psychological shift that I think people, you know, really need to get used to, and it's going to be one of the big challenges. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a few other sort of things that I think that are important in terms of what does the NDIS mean for people with disabilities. So another big change is going to be around who you buy your services from. So traditionally there are sort of a handful of large providers all doing roughly similar things in the program provision space. And I think this is one of the big things that's definitely going to change. So the data from the trial sites suggests that 74% of service providers providing supports to current NDIS participants are small to medium-sized entities. and 83%, I think this is fascinating, 83% were not previously registered as providing disability supports. So what we can, I think, learn from that is that if you like your existing provider, that's awesome, you know, and that will continue. But I think you can expect to see really a wide array of smaller orgs and new orgs popping up doing innovative things. So yeah, I think that's going to be a really big way that the NDIS changes. The other part of that is that I think people with disability and their families need to start thinking mainstream, that it's no longer going to be a case that you get your disability supports from the disability sector. I think we need to start thinking about supports as everything in the community, and that when you have your NDIS package, if you want to access a judo class as part of one of your activities, great. Join the mainstream judo class. We need to start thinking about you'll get your supports from disability orgs. It's going to be about the NDIS empowering people to access whatever it is in their community. And I think the data is suggesting that a lot of those will be smaller, you know, little small niche things and new things. So another big thing that's likely to change is around how you guys and people with disability on the webinar are going to be holding their package. So at the moment, some people are block funded who are participants on this webinar, which means that they access a service who have block funding from the government, and they just passively receive that service. A few of the people on the webinar are self-directed under current state arrangements, which means that, you know, funds are held by an entity, and the person with disability or their family can direct what they want that entity to do with their money. But under NDIS, this is all going to completely change. So you'll go into the NDIA, the National Disability Insurance Agency, and you'll make a plan based on the things that the person wants to do and achieve. And then you'll have the choice to self-manage your package, to agency manage your package, or to provider manage. And we're seeing, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute, the vast majority of people in the trial sites are either agency managing or self-managing their package. So what that means is that you will put your package either with the NDIA, who will just hold the money, and you will instruct the services that you want to access to invoice the NDIA on your behalf, which is a really big change to sort of being at the behest of some, you know, middleman agency who are holding your package, and that's going to be a huge change, particularly for those who are currently block funded. And I mean, I think the essence of that change really is control, having the control to manage your package either completely yourself or by telling the agency where to sort of spend your money. So those, I think, are the really big, the core ways that the experienced people with disability are going to change under NDIS, and we can sort of maybe pause for questions if people have them. But before we move on, we had some questions from Maggie Drummond, which I think sort of I'd like to answer because they sort of interplay with the things that I've been saying already. So her first question was, do families continue with existing service providers under NDIS? So, you know, this sort of fits in with what I was saying earlier. So yes, you definitely can if you want. It's the choice of the person with disability or their support network to choose.
So if you're happy, you stay with it.
So if you're happy, you stay with it.
You just say, this is where I want to go.
Yeah.
It's for them to send the money to.
Exactly, yeah. So now there is a bit of a caveat to that. So it depends if that service is still going to be around. There are estimates that about 40% of existing service providers might shut down or merge together. So I suppose you can't access your existing service provider if they're not there. However, if they're currently doing something that you like, that's why you want to stay with them. I think that means they're going to stay around because people are going to want to continue buying whatever it is that you like. But I think, like I said a minute ago, I think it's really important that people start thinking beyond the services that people currently receive and think, well, what else?
You can do anything.
You can do anything. You can do anything. And I think that's something that people need to sort of start, grappling with, and just thinking, I like that service provider, but do I like them because they are epic, or do I like them because they're not bad? And if it's the latter, then I think it's probably time to start thinking about how can we do better. So the second of Maggie's questions was, will NDIS change or cut any services? So I think there are two answers to that. First of all, individuals should not see any cuts to their supports at all. So as I said earlier, the amount of money that's going to be on the table for NDIS is for people with disability under NDIS is about to massively increase from about 6 billion, as I said, to about 21 billion. So the other thing that's interesting about that is that if you look at the numbers, the amount of people with disability who are going to be eligible for NDIS is not even doubling. So it's going from around 300,000 to about 460,000. So that's not doubling. Yet the amount of money on the table for packages is quadrupling. So what I think we can surmise from that is that people who are currently funded are going to get more money in their package to spend. I think that's
going to have to take in more things you're going to have to account for.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So like we'll be buying equipment and stuff like that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it's going to account for more.
Which is now.
Yeah. But I mean, if you look at just fighting chances services, I think the amount that we are going to be expected to charge according to the price structure is significantly more than what we currently charge. So I think there's going to be a lot more money. There's an expectation there's going to be more money in people's packages than there is now. So from that perspective, I don't think people should think that they're going to see a cut to their package. However, I think in terms of will services change, I think that we should expect that the sector is really likely to change a lot. And I think some orgs are going to survive, and you know that, and some are not going to survive, which is really going to change things up. But I actually think this is a really good thing, and I think that this is going to occur because people will be sourcing their needs from elsewhere. So in answer to Megan's question, no, I don't think services are going to be cut. I think it will change, but I think in a good way. So her third question was, will NDIS make things harder or easier for people with disability and their family? And I think it's a bit of both. So harder, I think in the short term, there's going to be work to do to get used to the new system.
Yeah, it's all right.
Yep. I think change can be hard, and we're going through a once in a generation change with this system. And they're also still building the NDIS, as I said. So I think we should expect that there are going to be, we've got a question. Oh, great. Thanks, Janine. I'll come right back to it. So I think, they're still building the NDIS. So we have a little bit of that pioneers challenge. I always think of the first Australian, when they arrived, on the boats, and they had to sort of build the whole country. And that's a little bit of where we're at with NDIS. We have to really build the sector that people with disability deserve. So I think that's going to be challenging. Some services may fold, like I said, which will be sad, and I'm sure people who love those services are going to feel sad about that. And we're going to need to do some work around deciding, and I think everyone's going to need to do some work deciding on their goals and the things that they want to get out of NDIA before they go into their planning session. I'm going to come back to talk about that. But I think longer term, the NDIS is going to make things vastly better and easier. So more money, supports, that's obviously a massive plus. I think we're going to see people with disability having more freedom, flexibility and control over their packages because they have the ability to self-manage or agency manage. We're going to see more innovation, and I think a lot of little small great orgs are going to be emerging everywhere that people will be able to access, and that's going to really enrich people's lived experience. I have no doubt that you're going to see better, more responsive service providers. People are going to have to get better.
Otherwise we won't choose them.
Otherwise they won't be chosen.
More competition. They're going to have to look at it again.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Competition and knowing that their customers suddenly have choice is going to, I think, completely change some of the less effective ones. I think there's also going to be a lot more information and information portals coming into the space. So there's an amazing group down in Melbourne called Clickability who are developing kind of a TripAdvisor style system for services, so that you can go on and type in your postcode and it will tell you what the services are in your area, and people can go in and rate them, and you can see which are good and bad. So it's great. That's going to come out of creating a marketplace. It's going to be those sorts of tools, which I think will really empower people with information.
How are we up to find out about that information that's coming through like that? So you just mentioned clickability.
So I'm hoping everyone on the webinar can hear Lynn. She asked how will people be able to find out about that sort of information. So when you go in to do your NDIS plan, you talk through your goals and they will do some, I think, gentle guidance. That's not their core role. But then after that, once you have your plan, you have the ability to pay out of your plan for a plan manager whose job is to tell you what's around. You know, you go and you say, look, one of my goals is I want to get really fit, and then they'll be able to say, well, this gym is great.
I've always personally found to be the problem. You don't know what's out there where you can go, how to find things. Unless you stick with people. So what we're seeing down in Canberra, for example, is that there are a bunch of plan managers popping up. So when I say plan managers, they're not financial managers. The financial piece is taken care of by the agency, but it's more about you pay them, I don't know, $40 an hour to go and sit with them and have a consultation and say, look, these are my goals, and they can say, oh, you should talk to these and these and these. They should be around there to help you.
Exactly.
Which way to go, what area.
Exactly. Plus, because it's a marketplace emerging, we're going to see the TripAdvisor style stuff popping up.
So how often would you have, like when you're assessed for how much funding you're eligible or what your plan is, generally how often would that occur, or is it pretty much a one-off?
No.
Kind of.
No, so I believe it's annual. I'm not 100% sure.
Under the impression that you go in there and then you'd be annually reviewed.
Yeah. So the question is for everyone. I'm not sure if you can hear, but I'm sure you can. How often is your plan reviewed? So as far as I'm aware, it's annual. And there's some interesting stats about the number of people who are on their fourth plan. So they must have been the very first cohort, and they're now up to their fourth plan. So you could go in and review and change things at that point. So I'm going to not forget Ginny's question. So do we know if holding our money with NDIS that they're going to charge a fee? No, that's a great question. No, so there's 3 different options for how you can hold your package. So one is NDIA managed, and when I say managed, this is just holding the money. There's no kind of consultation about, oh, should I do this or should I do that? This is about holding the money. So there's 3 ways that people can hold their money. NDIA managed, and there's no fee for that. So they just basically keep it in their bank account. And and people like Fighting Chance. So let's say for example you want to come to Fighting Chance. So you go in and you do your planning session and you say, I want to go to Fighting Chance, and they say, all right, well, here's the money for that. And then you then have the choice. What do you want to do with the money? Do you want to leave it with NDIA? And if you do, Fighting Chance would just invoice NDIA. Do you want to hold it yourself, be self-managed? And how that works is that you then get 1/12 of your full package in your bank account each month, according to your plan. So obviously there's no fee to hold it yourself.
And then Fighting Chance. So
and then Fighting Chance would
invoice us.
Yes, so we'd invoice you or the bank account holding the money.
If you kept it yourself, would you have to keep proper
records and stuff?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you have to have an ABN or anything like that?
You don't have to have an ABN as far as I'm aware, but you certainly have to keep good records. It's a little bit like tax.
Yes.
So they're not going to ask you for it directly.
You have to be accountable to them for the money that they give you.
Exactly. Yes. So they're not going to ask you each month to provide receipts, but they could pop in any day and say, where are the receipts for this $50 that you said you spent at Fighting Chance, for example? So you're going to have to keep all that. And I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but we're seeing the vast majority of people are agency managing, I think, for that reason. No one wants to have to worry about,
the agency will charge you a fee like they do now.
No, agency doesn't charge any fees.
The NDIA doesn't.
No.
But if you either do NDIA or you
self-manage. So the third option is provider. Third option is provider.
The provider will charge.
Yes. Yes. So you can put it with a provider. But to date, no one in the whole trial, out of 16,000 people, no one's done that. You'd be mad to. Why would you?
Don't take too much money and you pack me like you're super.
Yeah. I have another question. Thank you again. Is there any discussion about how smaller organisations that pop up will be held accountable? Yeah, great question. Tons. So safeguards is a huge thing. So it's that dignity of risk thing. So how do we empower people to make choices and make bad choices and fail, because that's part of the dignity of life, but also making sure that people who are particularly vulnerable are protected. So there's a whole bunch of work that's being done about that. I think the main piece is that there's quite a stringent accreditation process that you have to go through to be NDIS accredited. We're just kind of looking at that at the moment. If you're a decent you've got all your ducks in a row, it's not hard, it's just a bit, you've got to prove that you are the right kind of service provider. Someone just can't, put up a shingle if they go. So that is the main way. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff, sort of work that's being done about safeguards. I'm not sure there is a conclusion on that yet. I think it's one of the things that they are working on as they go, and trying to strike that balance between ensuring that service providers are decent, and empowering people to make choice. I think the other thing we're going to see, not at the moment, but as we progress, is probably deregulation, which is where the prices that service providers can charge and some of the stringent controls over them are going to sort of fade away and leave behind a genuine market. So what I mean by that is, potentially the best kind of way of holding service providers accountable is word of mouth and reviews of other people. So if we offer a horrible, horrible service, and Lynn's out there saying, oh my God, Fighting Chance is terrible, Sabina's not going to say, oh, I think I'm going to buy from Fighting Chance. It's in the same way that you don't go to a restaurant that you've heard is horrible. So there's a lot of talk about, as the market matures, the best safeguard is, the market. But for the time being, there's still plenty of protections around those entities who are NDIS accredited and can be used. Thank you for your excellent questions. Do I have any more?
No.
We're all good. Keep firing them at me if it's helpful. Okay, so where are we up to? So my next section, I was going to give you guys just an update from the trial sites, sort of where we're at, to date. And I think that really, I find that stuff fascinating, because I think that paints the picture of like how it's actually unfolding. So as at 31 March, the NDIS was active in 7 trial sites. So it's the Hunter, Barwon in Victoria, South Australia, across the state for 0 to 14-year-olds, Tasmania for 15 to 24-year-olds, ACT across the territory, Perth Hills in WA, and the Barkly region NT. And on 1 July, which is NDIS, was also launched in Western Sydney, in Penrith and the Blue Mountains. So it's sort of slowly, those trial sites are rolling out. So we don't really know exactly which area of New South Wales will go next. I'm not aware of that information. I don't think it's been released. However, we do know that the full rollout will be coming on progressively from across New South Wales from 1 July. So that means that areas are going to be coming online across the state from 1 July. So we haven't got a huge amount of time, less than a year, which is exciting and terrifying. But
then that will take a couple more years for it to be fully.
Yeah, so it won't be fully rolled out, I think, until 2018.
And that'll be mean like business costs right across
the state. Yeah, but who knows? They could say the whole of Sydney region is next to go, and then we're all off and running.
We just have to be lucky.
Yes, hope so. So as at 31 March, there were 19,344 requests were lodged for people to join the scheme across those trial sites that I mentioned, with 85% of those being found eligible to join the NDIS. And the main cause for ineligibility was age. So as I mentioned, some of those trial sites have age restrictions, but also residency. So people not falling within the trial sites.
So Laura, when it does come in, and so it's in your area and you're eligible, is there an age bracket to be able to apply? So
yes,
is it
265.
To 65.
So the idea is with the NDIS is that it covers people from birth to 65, and plus 65, the aged care space is meant to cover you. There is some interesting stuff about people who just before 65 and join the NDIS, the government would cover them, but theoretically speaking, when you reach 65, you should switch out of the NDIS into the aged care sector.
Okay.
So to date, a total of 13,610 of those eligible to apply have received an approved plan. So you can see that there's a little bit of a lag there. Not there's a bunch who are eligible and have been accepted as eligible, but then there's a little bit of a lag to get their plan, and we're seeing the most significant lag in SA at the minute, which the feds are funding to sort out. So they're sorting that out, but the rest of the states are keeping up quite well. So to date, 65% of active participants participants have already received under old arrangements, and there are 35% who are totally new. So 65% are people who had with disability who were supported under some previous model, and only 35% of those are new. Of the plans that have been funded, a number are on their second, third, and there's quite a small number, but they're on their fourth plan, which is that repeat thing, which is cool. And then the most commonly funded supports in dollar terms are tasks of daily living, community participation, and assistance with personal activities. Those are the main things that are funded in dollar terms.
Social.
Yeah, so community participation, attendant care, someone to come and support you have a shower and get you up in the morning. Those sorts of things are the most funded in dollar terms. So then in terms of the financial management, and this is the question that we were talking about earlier, 63% are solely agency managed. So they keep their money with the NDIA and they have their service providers just invoice the NDIA. 63% only do that. 32% use a combination of agency managed and self-managed, which means for 9 out of 10 of my supports, I want the agency to hold the money and you just invoice the agency. But for 1/10 of it, I want to have control. I'm going to have that bit of money in my bank account each month. I'm going to organise that myself. So you can do a combination if you want. 5% are solely self-managed, and that is primarily coming out of South Australia, where it's actually about 12%. I think because it's a lot of young families and they are a bit, tech savvy and want to do it themselves. But across the other states, it's a lower proportion. And then 0% are provider managed. Why would you pay a fee? So no one's doing it. The average package size is $34,900 is the average package size across the whole NDIS, but interestingly, it's much higher for people with high support needs. The average is actually $40,800 if you take into account people who are currently living in group residential facilities, and there aren't many of them. So to increase the average by that much, it means that they're getting much more sizable packages. And interestingly, the average in Tasmania, which if you will remember is targeting people who are 15 to 24, that their packages on average are $54,700. So I think that shows that end of school period, there's a lot that needs to be done there. I think that the average is brought down a little bit by the early intervention stuff, and people with higher care needs. No problem. And then this is, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of providers, so we're seeing 74% are small or medium enterprises, which I think is fascinating because a lot of the orgs in the sector are really huge. And 83% were not previously registered as an NDIA, as a provider of disability supports. So I think that's lots of OTs, lots of, the local judo. People are seeing an opportunity and want to open up, some accessibility, and they register. I think there's a lot of that stuff happening, which is really exciting. And then the final thing is participant satisfaction. It's really high, and I couldn't find the exact number, but it's somewhere in the 90s, which is awesome. But there are lower levels in SA, ACT, and WA. But across the board, people are really satisfied with it, which you wouldn't know, I don't think, from reading necessarily the papers, but. I think that's to be expected given the massive benefits of it. So if anyone has any questions about that, we might move on to what you should do to prepare. Any questions from online, Sean?
No, not from me.
Okay, great. Okay, so what should you be doing to prepare? So I think there are a bunch of things that you should be doing now, and it does feel a little premature because we don't even know when it's coming to our area. But on the other hand, it's never too early to start thinking about it given the size of the change. So the first thing I think you need to be doing is really finding out what's coming and keep asking and looking at what this is all, what's going on with this whole change. As I said at the very beginning, it does change regularly. They are still putting it together, so information does change really fast. So I think it's really worth trying to stay on top of it. Give some suggestions of how people can do that in a minute. This is the most important thing I think people should be doing now, is starting to think about you or your person's goals. What is it that you want to achieve, and starting to think about what other supports that are going to enable that. So that's around things like equipment and aids, That's the things around, training and education, early intervention for children, what therapy services would be beneficial, but most importantly, I think around services. What's the service or activity mix that is going to best further the individual's personal goals? And I think that on that service piece, I think it's around what services do you want to be continued access that are good? What services or supports would you like to add in the ideal world? Looking at your whole week, what's the mix? And again, as I said earlier, not just thinking about what are the disability supports that are currently available. What does that look like? The ideal week. And then once you've got that in your mind, I think then going around and really having a conversation with those services, or if it's a mainstream activity, go and talk to that activity and find out what the cost looks like for, to be able to access that and what they offer, and really asking those questions about, about understanding the efficiency of those services and the values that that service can add, and getting a sense of their price. And the point of that is to really equip yourself with a budget almost, or at least a sense of what is the money that you're going to need to be able to create the life for yourself or for your person that you support that's really going to fulfill their goals. And then have all that ready to take with you to your initial planning meeting with the NDIA. I think, as we said before, the value of each person's plans for people who have existing supports, I think can expect to increase in dollar terms. I think you can expect your plan to get bigger. I think you're more likely to have that outcome, and a really positive outcome in terms of that initial consultation with NDIA, if you go in equipped with the information about what you want, what's the perfect mix, and how much it's going to cost. Be assertive. And
super assertive, I've been told. I've been hearing around the traps.
Yes, yes. Because I think it's like anything. There's more money on the table, but they have to be careful about divvying it out, and they're not going to volunteer things. I think you need to go in well prepared with, this is what we want, this is how much it costs, this is what we need. Now this is, and it's a really important thing to say about that, the phrase that you hear when you start looking at the NDIS in detail is reasonable and necessary supports. So the NDIS only funds reasonable and necessary supports. So what does that mean? That means that they're not going to fund, for example, hydrotherapy really relaxes me, so I want to build a pool in my front garden. That's not reasonable or necessary. However, hydrotherapy really relaxes me, so I think 3 sessions a week would be great. They're going to look at, is that a reasonable and necessary support that's going to enrich your goals. So I think need to do that, constrain that thought process within that context of, is this reasonable and necessary? But I think beyond that, really worth starting to pull the information together. And for those on the webinar, it's not everybody, but for those who are on the webinar who access Fighting Chances services, if you want to continue using Fighting Chance in this new world, come and chat. We'll talk about our price structure, and we can sort of equip you guys with that. And I think it's worth asking all your other services that you want to continue to have that conversation too, so you can start to see what a package is going to look like. Okay, so the last thing I've got is more information. Where do you go to get more information? And as I said in my point 1 of what should you be doing, I think staying on top of information is crucial. So there are a whole bunch of different avenues that you can go to get info. So the NDIS website, for a start, is fantastic, as is their Facebook group. There's also other Facebook groups that you can join, such as NDIS Grassroots, which just have, it's a really great community of people talking and sharing and posting articles and all that kind of stuff. And you can learn a lot just by kind of, browsing those comments and articles while you're having your coffee. That's what I do. So the NDIS did definitely at the beginning, I'm not sure if they still do, but they did a set of webinars themselves, and also and they still do. Sean's nodding.
They do. Yeah.
Great. So the NDIA do webinars, which probably will be much more informed than this one, but they're a great source of updated information, and also community sort of forums and meetings, also hosted by service providers. I've seen a bunch that are starting to do these sorts of information sessions for their people, so it's worth jumping on those. Expos, I mean, there's going to be one in a few weeks out in Penrith, so those are really great to kind of start to get a sense of what the services are that are available and those sorts of things. Conferences, the NDIA do a bunch of conferences. There was recently one on employment. I think there's going to be one on housing. They are expensive, that's the downside to those, but a little trick, you can, if they're NDIS conferences, you can often get transcripts of what people have said on the NDIS website for free, so that's sometimes a cheeky way to get a couple of $1,000 worth of conference value. You can also, the NDIA, their website have fantastic quarterly reports. So all the information I got to give you guys the update about what's happening from the trial sites just came out of a quarterly report. And if you just type in Google NDIS quarterly reports, you'll be able to see what's happening, and you can really get a good sense of where things are up to from some of the stats that they produce. We're going to continue this webinar to the extent that people want to use it. We'll see how. We've had great attendance this month, but we'll see how we go in future months. But if people are interested, we'll continue this and can kind of keep giving updates. And then obviously from, Fighting Chance's perspective, come in and see us and, talk about what you're thinking. And if you want to make Fighting Chance part of your your service mix, we can, answer any questions that we can. I've got another question from Janine. Thank you very much. What happens with unspent funds at the end of the year? Ooh. Great question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the exact answer to that, but I'm pretty sure you lose them. I don't think it rolls over.
More than likely, it sounds like you probably would.
Yeah.
I would think.
Yeah, I don't think I've never heard anyone talk about them rolling over. I don't think they do.
With our CPP funding, there was a certain amount that you could roll over until next year. Now they've actually decreased that again now this year. So I think the idea was, and the same when we have our flexible respite funding, that's never been rolled over either. So what's not being used, not being used. So I think what would happen would be when you go back for your next review meeting, they would say, oh, well, you asked for this much money, how come you haven't spent it?
Yes, that's a great point then. I think it definitely could be a sign that you've been funded too highly.
Yeah, so you're more likely not to get that much money next time you review.
That is a question that. So yes, so that's a question that we will take and we'll just confirm. But I've never heard anyone talk about rolling over, so I'm not sure that's possible.
No, probably wouldn't be. But who knows?
Maybe we'll check. Thank you, Janine, for the question. Do we have any other questions, Sean?
Not through email, but there might be through.
Ooh.
I couldn't actually access that, so if there's anything.
I'm just going to see if anyone's asked questions on the actual webinar, although I'm not really exactly sure where I'm looking, Sean.
Back in
Sorry. Well, it's just for you because you haven't been out into the system yet.
Yeah, and I haven't even ever accessed Respond.
That's right, yeah. That would have been me 4 years ago.
No.
Okay, good. No questions online. Okay, so if no one has any questions,
it's quite easy actually.
And there's no more through email?
Yes.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, that's all we've got. So thank you very much for joining and for asking your questions. I hope very much that this has been helpful. For those on the webinar, if you have feedback of like, oh, I really wanted to know about that and you just didn't cover it and you totally missed the point, please drop me an email, laura@fightingchance.org.au. Would be really happy to, change it up for the next time around. And like I said, please at any time give us a call if you want to, know anything else, and we can do our best to either find the answer if we don't know it. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Speak to you all soon. Bye.